What's going on, everybody? Alex here from the Football Guys, here to talk about Travis Kelce versus Mark Andrews in 2022 half PPR redraft leagues. So let's jump right in. This was the first time in 6 years that Travis Kelce was dethroned as the tight end one. 2015 was the last time that Travis Kelce did not finish as the tight end one, and he was the tight end 7. But Travis Kelce was the tight end 1 overall in 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Had to put the numbers in because it's that insane. And until Mark Andrews took over this year in 2021, what has he done before this? Why did he take over this year? In 2018, as a rookie, Mark Andrews finished the tight end 17. In 2019, Mark Andrews had a breakout season, finishing as the tight end 4 behind only Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and Darren Waller. 2020, he had another great year, finishing as the tight end 5. And then this year, he took the mantle from Travis Kelce, finishing as the clear tight end 1 by 30 fantasy points in half PPR leagues. So that begs the question, who should we now be picking between Andrews and Kelce in 2022? The guy who's had the throne, or the guy who now took the throne from the man himself? And I think the biggest question that we ask at this point is Mark Andrews' production with and without Lamar. It's actually pretty ridiculous. In 11 games with Lamar Jackson this year, Mark Andrews had 12.3 points per game in fantasy football. And it's worth noting that in those 11 games, he had 5 top 10 green matchups, which are matchups that are really good. Half his games with Lamar were phenomenal matchups, and he had 12.3 points per game, which is still fantastic. But in the 6 games without Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews averaged 19 points per game in fantasy football and only had 1 top 10 easy matchup in those 6 games and had 22.5 fantasy points. I put that in there because it's just slightly above average. It's not like he had a crazy game in his one really good matchup. He literally just was nuclear, whether with Tyler Huntley or a little bit of Josh Johnson. I mean, he was just absolutely unbelievable. But here's another thing to note, that Mark Andrews this year had a little bit over he had 14.7 points per game on the season for fantasy football. So how does that compare to Kelce and all his other tight end 1 seasons? How many seasons would Mark Andrews have been the tight end 1? In 2016, Travis Kelce averaged 11.3. In 2017, he averaged 12.8. 2018, he had 15.2. 2019, he had 12.9. 2020, he had 17.4. And in 2021, Travis Kelce had 13.7, which was his 3rd best points per game in fantasy football in the last 7 seasons. He only had 2 seasons better than this. That shows how ridiculous Mark Andrews' season was this year to be able to be the tight end 1 over Kelce, with Kelce having the 3rd best fantasy football season of his entire career. So based on the fact that Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews together had 12.3 fantasy points per game, which is still ridiculously good, and without Lamar, he had 19 points per game. I know it's a smaller sample size, only 6 games. I'm probably going to ride Travis Kelce. Again, Travis Kelce has been a top 2 tight end in 6 out of the last 6 seasons, and he's been the number 1 overall tight end in 5 out of the last 6 seasons. And this year, he still had the 3rd best season of his career. So I'm more likely to lean Mark Andrews to regress a little bit more than someone like Travis Kelce, who have the same quarterback, same offense, same coach, where Mark Andrews should have Lamar, but he has not had as much of a great track record without Lamar. So what is that track record? Of course, it's still a top 5 tight end, but we're talking about who are you drafting in the 2nd round of your fantasy football leagues as the 1st tight end overall, and the answer is Travis Kelce. Don't forget, though, Mark Andrews is still the clear tight end 2. He is the only tight end in the entire NFL to finish top 5 each of the last 3 years. George Kittle didn't do that. Darren Waller didn't do that. Mark Andrews did that, finishing as the tight end 1, 4, and 5 each of the last 3 years. Oh, it's worth noting that he has moved up each of the last 3 years, so maybe he's here to, be the tight end 1 for years to come. But at this point, I'm still willing to bet on Travis Kelce. And points per game wise, he was only 1 point per game less than Mark Andrews this year. Travis Kelce did miss a game because of COVID. So that's where part of that 30-point gap came from. But again, Travis Kelce, top 2 each of the last 6 years, top 1, 5 out of the last 6 years. I know I keep saying that. But unfortunately for you Mark Andrews truthers, I think Travis Kelce is still the answer. But I could be wrong. Who knows? These are just the facts, and I'm just here to bring them, and you can do with them whatever you would like. That is another video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and put the bell notifications on for the Football Guys, one of the best fantasy sites in the world. But until then, keep enjoying more great content each and every single